Hello, let's get to it. What is a good story? Are there rules in writing? Yes, yes there are, and although they are not set in stone, they are guidelines in which writers use to tell a good story. George R. Martin understands this in the Game of Thrones series. But first let's talk about one of the rules that is used in storytelling, and that is story structure. Story structure is simply the building blocks of the story, like pieces on a chessboard, and they need to be put in the right place in order for them to work. An example is during the start of Game of Thrones, we are told and shown that Jaime Lannister is the best swordsman in all of Westeros. That is a piece of the story. The following piece is when Jaime loses his hand to protect Lady Brienne.
Should help you remember.
These are structure points. Each point is just as important as the scene before it, and the points flow on a logical manner. First we are given the information that he knows how to fight, then we are shown what became of him due to that fact. If the bandits had not known that he was a Kingslayer, they would have just killed him or stabbed him in the leg. But once they knew who he was, they cut off his sword hand. The events serve the purpose later on in the overall story, which is why it's so important to get the story structure correct. The least said about seasons 7 and 8, the better, as all the progress that was made to Jaime was thrown out the window. This is just an example of macro structuring. It spans over multiple books and scenes to get to a single point. Another form of structuring is microstructuring, when it centers on one scene and the character's dialogue and actions that lead to the following scene. An example of this is in the intro of Predator 1.
Good, Dutch.
It's been a long time, General.
Come on inside.
We've got a transponder fix on their position. About here.
This cabinet minister, does he always travel on the wrong side of the border? Son of a bitch!
As you can see from the intro, each part of the scene followed on to the next part. From the landing of the helicopter, to Dutch getting into the jeep, to him meeting General Phillips, to him meeting Dutch, and also the debrief. This is microstructuring. It is actually every action beats a dialogue plan surfing a certain scene that leads into the next scene. The characters' interactions have to make sense on whom the characters are and what it means to the scene. When Mark Hamill says to Rian Johnson, "This isn't Luke Skywalker, this is Jay Skywalker," he means that the character of Luke in The Last Jedi was not consistent with the Luke from the original series, and that it doesn't follow previous structure set up, i.e. the character of Luke Skywalker in the original series.
I said to Ryan, I said, Jedis don't give up. I mean, even if he had a problem, he would maybe take a year to try and regroup. But if he made a mistake, he would try and right that wrong. So right there, we had a fundamental difference. But it's not my story anymore. It's somebody else's story. And Ryan needed me to be a certain way to make the ending effective. That's the crux of my problem. Luke would never say that. I'm sorry. Well, in this version, see, I'm talking about the George Lucas Star Wars.
As stated at the start, the rules are guidelines, so yes, you can change the structure, but it needs to follow the narrative in a logical way that makes sense, and not just put something in because it looks cool or some other shallow belief. If a story has no structure, then it fails. So these are good examples of micro and macro structuring. But what is bad structure? The best example of terrible structure is the Finn and Rose story in Star Wars The Last Jedi. If you were to remove the Canto Bight plot and infiltration of the Sith flagship, nothing changes in the narrative. Nothing at all. It serves absolutely no purpose to the overall narrative and story as a whole. And the story needs structure, and yet Rian Johnson's poor decision to add a pointless scene does nothing. When your priority is to put your own agenda into the story, you get what you had in The Last Jedi. You were to take out Canto Bight and the narrative of evil capitalism and the flagship mission. Nothing changes, which is the problem, because this was inserted into the story. But if you were to take it out, nothing is affected. As stated many times earlier, there are rules in writing, but The Last Jedi breaks so many of them, and it's a good allegory of what not to do in writing. Poor story structure can only lead to one thing. If you enjoyed this video, like, comment and share. You can follow me on Twitter, Facebook and Pinterest, and my blog where you can find my latest work. Work that includes short stories, films, reviews and social commentary. Thank you, and until next time. Bye. Links down below.